What's up, guys? I know that I haven't been posting in probably about 2 weeks now. Today's just going to be a real quick video about kind of some of the camera gear I use. I'm not really going to go too in depth about showing you what all I've got. I'm going to do a whole nother video at some point when I get all the stuff together that I'd like to have. But today is just going to be kind of over my main use camera, why I use it, and also why I'm kind of at a point where upgrading makes sense but doesn't, and I'll explain that in a second. But I'm just kind of gonna go over why I use what I use and why I'm not probably going to be buying anything to upgrade anytime soon. Maybe just some more lenses, but yeah, so we're gonna get started with the video. All right, guys, so my main camera that I use is the Nikon D3300. It's still a pretty good camera. Released in 2015, I believe, 2016, somewhere in there. It doesn't have Wi-Fi or NFC connection or anything like that. I can't use any wireless apps or remotes or anything, but what I really like about this camera is that it shoots in 1080p at 60 frames a second, which, if you know about video and stuff like that, 60 frames is kind of the bare minimum for smooth slow motion shots and B-roll shots and stuff like that. So I really like it because it does shoot 1080p at 60 frames. It's at a pretty good price point. I might include the link in the description if I can find one on Amazon or eBay that for you guys to go check out. But it's got all the normal features that you would really get from a camera. It does include 2 lenses in the kit if you buy it brand new. I bought mine used, but if you buy it brand new, I believe it comes with the 18 to 55 lens that has autofocus and vibration reduction, but I think the other lens is a 70 to 200, I believe, that comes with it. So it's a pretty good value deal for what you get. I'd really like to get an 11 to 16 lens here soon, but the 18 for now is actually pretty good at what it does and whatnot. Today I'm shooting on a different camera just so that I can show my main camera. And all my other videos that you've seen, though, have been shot on the Nikon D3300. Its sensitivity to low light, it does go all the way up to 12,800, which is pretty good, but with this camera I've noticed that you do get a lot of noise in the shadows, so I mean you can kind of try and edit those out and smooth those out, but just know that it is going to have it's kind of weak in the low light levels, if in my opinion, but it's still pretty good camera in darkness. When you've got enough light, I think it turns out pretty good. I like the way that it looks when I film. I've got a wedding video that's going to be coming out soon on my channel when I show my clients what I did. It was my first wedding I shot, so it probably won't be the best video, but I like how it did turn out. So I have an extra battery grip here. It's an aftermarket one, but it's it filmed in about an hour and a half, 2 hours worth of straight continuous 1080p footage. So I'm pretty pumped that this camera was able to stay on that long. Another feature that I really like about the 3300 is that the 3400 switched to I believe it has Wi-Fi on it. It's the newer model of the 3300. It has basically the same features, except this has a microphone jack and the 3400 doesn't. I don't know why when you upgrade you get less features. I thought that was kind of weird that they took away the microphone jack, but I mean, sacrificing for Wi-Fi is really not that big of a deal in my opinion. I don't think that the Wi-Fi really adds very much of a benefit unless you really need it. So one of the reasons why I'm probably not going to upgrade at this point, the only way that I would upgrade is if I'm moving up to a cinema camera, or I've been kind of thinking about it of doing like a Sony mirrorless camera, just because they can shoot upwards of 240 frames a second at 1080 and 4K and stuff like that, and I think that'd be a really great feature. But the majority of DSLR cameras that I've seen, even the newer ones, you know, I completely understand the concept of the better, you know, the newer camera, you get better quality parts, and the sensor is a better quality. But from the specs that I've been reading and comparing to the 3300, is that nothing's really changed in the aspect, at least with Nikon, of 1080p, 60 frames a second, and megapixels. I believe this has 24.2. I'll have to double check that. If it is different, which I don't have the specs up right now, then I'll put it on the screen. But that's a pretty powerful sensor in my opinion. And like I was saying, when I was comparing specs to the newer models and newer Canons and other Canons, you know, kind of contemplating switching, I've noticed that they also have the same megapixel size, and some of them have even dropped down in megapixel size. And I get the whole concept of, if you've got a certain size sensor and you try and fit too many pixels on that single sensor, things are going to bleed over and the image isn't going to be as smooth. But from what I've noticed on pictures and everything on this, the size of the sensor to the amount of megapixels has been, I haven't noticed any issues in my opinion. You guys are welcome to leave any comments or anything if you've noticed anything that I'm, you know, not pointing out. But this camera is mainly my video camera, and like I said, I haven't noticed anything, you know, bad about the video quality. I haven't noticed that, you know, when I do slow motion, none of the frames drop. When you do 60 frames, you do have to move slower, but it you know, it's not that big of a deal. I think it's a pretty good sacrifice for how much 120 frame per second cameras do cost. And from what I've seen on the Nikon website, now that, you know, it may be different, I may be, you know, looking at something differently, but in the DSLRs for Nikon, the max is 60 frames per second, even on 4K. Some of the 4K cameras that Nikon has put out DSLR wise is 1080p, 4K, 720. All of them are 60 frames per second across the board. I don't know why that is, but that's what I've noticed, and that's kind of why I don't want to upgrade, because I actually want to stay in the Nikon realm just because I like their color grading in camera and how it comes out on my videos. Plus I've gotten used to them, and if I switch to Canon, I'm gonna have to sell a bunch of stuff so I can get lenses and stuff like that. But Canon does have a few options of 120 frames per second, which would be nice to add on to my gear that I have, but for the moment, I don't really think that upgrading DSLR wise is going to be, you know, a good option, just because of the fact that, like I was saying, the ones now are basically the same specs as the camera I have now. And the camera that I do photography with is the Nikon D50, which is a significantly older DSLR camera. It's probably, I believe, the second generation in the DSLR family, the D40 being the predecessor, and I believe the D90 came after. I might be wrong about that. I do know the D90 was the first one to start shooting video, but the D50, I did the majority of my shots on the D50. I did my buddy's car on there, and I thought they turned out great. I did some family portraits with it. It's a 5 megapixel sensor, which the size of the sensor to the limited amount of megapixels actually, in my opinion, makes for great images. And I'm probably not even gonna, you know, that's probably gonna stay within my lineup until it finally gives out. That was my first camera I bought, and I thought it, you know, I think it's a great piece of my equipment. But like I was saying, with this, I've got the Nikon D3300 for video, the spare battery pack, or the additional battery pack, and then I've also got a gimbal, which is the Moza Air Cross 2, and the gimbal I bought is mainly for mirrorless cameras, but it does have a maximum weight capacity of 3.9 pounds, which this with the lens fully extended, and I've got the cheese plate pushed all the way back with the extra battery pack, and I don't really have any additional weight. The gimbal actually holds this camera very well. I know it's not designed for it, but I do love using that gimbal very much. Another thing that I also am going to upgrade, if you will, is I'm going to get a constant battery pack that goes into the 3300, so that if it's on the gimbal and I am going to be shooting for a long time on the gimbal, I can take the battery pack off and leave that in, and then just plug it into an outlet, which I'm kind of wanting to get a very large battery bank that has DC like wall outlet connections on it, so I can carry it in a pack with me, and then that way I can have constant power and I won't have the additional weight of the battery pack. And I think that the gimbal would like that a little more. But yeah, so like I was saying, as for upgrading my camera at the moment, the only thing that I'm going to say, and I'm no expert in any of this stuff. This is just my own opinions and what I think of the camera. And upgrading at this point in time, I don't think that it's really worth it yet, because the price of the cameras, in my opinion, the pricing of the cameras doesn't really add up to the specs that you're going to get with it, especially if you have a camera that can do what you want it to do. My needs don't outweigh my wants, if you will. I've got a setup that can do exactly what I want it to do, what I need it to do. I've got additional cameras to do additional footage. They also shoot up to 1080, not any slow-mo with them, but I can get continuous shots. As the camera I'm shooting on right now is a Canon handheld camcorder, and it does great 1080p, 24 frames a second, and that's all I need for stuff like this, or webcam, stuff like that. But my plans for upgrading is going to probably just be a cinema camera. I'm going to go over the top with it, and whenever I get to that point, I'm probably going to wind up buying a Sony or I would really, and I know this is above and beyond, but I would like to get a Red or a Blackmagic or something like that. I know they're expensive, but I think that it would be a good investment, because that's actually where cameras are heading towards, in my opinion, and I just think that would be really good. But so yeah, that's my video for this week, guys. Sorry I haven't posted in a while. I know that it's been a couple weeks. Like I said, I do have that wedding video coming up that I'm gonna put on the channel after I show my clients it, and hopefully I'm gonna have a lot more bookings after that. I do have my website up. I'll include the link to that in my description. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll hopefully catch you guys next week.